Hi everyone. Let's have a look at an endgame rook and pawn versus rook. And we're going to talk about this from the defensive point of view. How do you defend this endgame? Well, you can defend it by achieving a position known as Philidor's position, and it's also called the third rank defense. And before I show you how to achieve that, let's look at a failed attempt to defend this position. So here it's white to move and he's totally lost. And the reason he's lost is because his rook is very passive. It's sitting on the back rank doing nothing. And black's king is in a lot of danger. The black pieces have all of these squares controlled, so the king is behind that wall and black is threatening back rank mates like swinging the rook over to h2 and then mating on h1. The rook is passive on the back rank. This is called a passive defense, and it fails. The rook is stuck there because if it ever leaves the back rank, there's just going to be a back rank mate. The rook would have to block, and then black mates. So white got himself into trouble by leaving his rook on the back rank. The best white can do here is try to run from behind this wall by moving over this way, so that if black comes over here and checks, maybe he can escape. Well, the quickest way for black to win here is to play rook to c2 check, driving the king right back where it was, and then threaten the mate on the h1 square. So the only way to stop this back rank mate is, again, to run back to c1 with the king, but then rook check works anyway, because after the king escapes, black trades rooks, and then he's going to promote his pawn very easily. All right, so that's a failed attempt to defend this kind of endgame, rook and pawn versus rook. So how do we do it? Well, take a look at the position where I take the king and pawn here and back them up one rank. Here, we've given white a fighting chance. So white's to move again, and he can draw this position. And the way he does it is he achieves Philidor's position, also called the third rank defense, and he does it by moving his rook to the third rank. It's important to do that before either the king or the pawn reach that rank. You want to block off that rank and take control of it. Okay, if you can do that, it's an easy draw, and I'll show you how. The point is, you're simply going to remain on the third rank as long as possible, stopping black from making any progress. If black just marks time with the rook, then you're going to mark time, and you're going to keep control of that third rank. If black ever checks you, that's fine. You're just getting your king improved, getting it closer to the enemy pawn. And you can stay either on the d2 or d1 square anytime you get checked. Okay. Black may dance around with the king. Again, you can just stay on that third rank. Just continue to stay on the third rank. If you have to, you swing far away like that. And so what can black try to make any progress? Well, at some point, black's going to have to push their pawn. Now, as soon as they do, then you're going to have to abandon the third rank defense and switch it up. You're going to drop back to the 8th rank with the idea of checking the black king from behind. Okay. And the point is, once black pushed the pawn forward, that means the black king has no shelter from those checks. Before black pushed that pawn, the square in front of the pawn could have been a nice shelter from any checks from behind. But black destroyed his own shelter, so you go back and get ready to check. Now let's say black moves here, you can check, black moves over, you can check, black moves over, you can check, black comes up, you check, black goes over here. Now you can keep checking, but it's also simple just to go back anytime he abandons control of the pawn, just go back and attack the pawn. And if the rook defends here, you can just approach it with the king and win the pawn. If the king goes back to defend, just continue checking. All right, so again, the idea is to grab that third rank as soon as you can, to stop black from advancing to it. So before the king or the pawn achieve that third rank, you grab control. And you keep control of that rank until the pawn comes forward, and then you drop back for checks from behind. Let's look at some other attempts black might make to thwart your plans. So starting again, let's say we grab the third rank, and let's say black moves over here, and we just mark time on the third rank, and black immediately tries to push the pawn. So we drop back, and we're ready to check from behind. Well, let's say black tries to bring the rook back to create shelter. Just like in the Lucena position, black might want to build a bridge, so to speak. Well, we can check, and if black decides to block the check, just trade rooks and then approach the pawn, because you're in a completely drawn king and pawn endgame when you control the square right in front of the pawn. All right, I have other videos on king and pawn endgames if you're unsure about this. Just check my endgame playlist. So creating a shelter with your rook doesn't do anything. Let's have another look at another defense. Okay, suppose again here you grab the third rank. Let's say black moves the rook over here and you mark time. What if black challenges you on the third rank like this with the rook? Well, you can trade rooks again and enter a drawn king and pawn endgame. This king cannot help here. So you're just going to grab the opposition. If he advances the pawn, you get in front of it. And again, this is a drawn king and pawn endgame. So the Philidor position, or the third rank defense, is an easy draw. Let's have a look at one more position right here. So white to move. Should white check? Should white check from behind like that? Well, I think it actually is a draw, but it's a harder draw. Black can come up and get shelter in front of the pawn and threaten a mate here. Now, the king's going to have to run, and it gets a little complicated. The simplest move from the beginning is, of course, to control the third rank, and you have a Philidor position, just as we discussed. Okay, so if black hasn't yet pushed his king or pawn to the third rank, then you're going to grab that third rank if you can. And that's an easy draw. All right, thanks for watching.